So I was pretty excited to jump into episode 2. The one thing I guess I wasn't quite expecting, despite hearing some buzz in last week's comment section about Kelvin and the party and just apparently it's pretty damn fantastic. As someone who liked the first episode, I just wasn't expecting episode 2 to go as hard as it did. Even though, yeah, you have the kind of like Fire Emblem CGI fight scene, which, truthfully, I'm just glad if they're going to commit to CGI, make the whole thing it, because ultimately when you have that juxtaposition of not so well blended 3D with a 2D object, you're just asking for a recipe for disaster. It wasn't the greatest thing ever, I'm not here to say that, but I am going to say that it's no different than the Fire Emblem cutscenes I've recently watched, so it's not the worst thing in the world and doesn't get to Berserk quality if you ask me. But the thing that got me with this episode is how much of an unexpected badass or a goat Kelvin actually turned out to be. I mean, I think it was probably the smart thing to just kind of have him train off screen, because as much as sometimes that slow burn stuff, and you'll hear me compliment slow burn all the time on the channel, I think this episode's far more interesting with him a bit more progressed towards his kind of like OP status, because you know he's gonna get there. And as fun as the almost Pokemon battle last week was, hell, in this episode they confirmed that Clotho literally evolved like a Pokemon, and I mean, you probably wanted to smash B on your screen because he's such an adorable little slime and you don't want him to evolve. But luckily he can change his shape from monstrous beast to just a little adorable slime. But Kelvin's this character who, he's like an unexpected badass without being an edgelord or too full of himself. He's like that nice middle ground of both sides of the spectrum. The whole idea that you're going up against someone who typically preys on the new adventurers and seemingly kills them because you don't get the title murderer for nothing. And even though he didn't himself become a murderer, I think what's interesting is that he absolutely humiliated them in the most entertaining way possible, and now they're in the slammer awaiting the death penalty. It was crazy to see how he took the advantage of knowing that they were going to come there, take care of his base, it kind of was just the appetizer fight, all things considered, and immediately gained a new servant with this armored knight who in his head now worships him as king and is like, is that woman at the front desk gonna be in your harem, my king? As then you have your goddess who claims she's your fiance and you have to call it out that you're just literally trying to avoid your duties as a goddess, and then of course you have Clotho just being the slime that it is. It's so great to see this man in how he just immediately sucks you in this episode. I thought he was a pretty funny and entertaining character in episode 1. What this episode does a good job at is really getting a taste of who he is as a person. Now that he's a bit more familiar with this world, the mechanics, he's being smart about everything, he's hiding his status, so when people look in and read him, especially as seen by some people trying to prey on your weak status, you have a good shield. And I mean, just look at the fight scene before it started. They seemingly can read what he's doing because he has a staff, but he's concealing his abilities, right? Or his stat level. So basically, to them, it looks like he's an open book. But as we saw, it doesn't really work out all too well. And I think it's really cool seeing how, you know, for them, they basically think like, okay, this dude's either the luckiest bastard who somehow managed to succeed in his quest up to this point, or he's like a top mage from another kingdom and, you know, we don't know what's what. But given the fact that he ended up taking care of their biggest nuisance, they go from really hating the newbie, jumping up the ranks, to cheering for him, because if our options is Kelvin and the douchebag, I mean, we're going to take Kelvin any day of the week for being the best in the guild here. But it's really cool because they end the episode with him getting a special bump in promotion, given that the quest was a lot harder than initially anticipated, given the bounty and obviously dealing with the knight. And now he's going to be talking with the guild leader. It'll be interesting to see like how far he'll actually jump and what type of missions he'll get, because as it stands, he's able to go solo, but he's trying to conceal himself to live that kind of low-key life, and we know it's not going to work out forever, but it'll be interesting to see what type of threats he'll deal with, because as the end of the episode shows us, I think he has 7 slots left in terms of summons, so right now he has 3, the goddess, the knight, and his slime. So it'll be fun to see what type of other servants he'll get along the way, because as it stands, the good thing that this show has done is give the servants a personality. Talking Menu Goddess, fantastic in episode 1, Big Bro who basically just wants you to be a harem king and is a badass knight, pretty fantastic, and a slime who morphs into all shapes and sizes. Each of them have their own unique personality and unique moveset and probably potential. I mean, as it stood, the goddess was kind of like the companion that he talks to, but now that a second one can talk, I'm excited to see how many of them will actually be able to have a conversation, and if they'd ever go the route of giving his slime a voice at some point through abilities or something like that, maybe an evolution, I don't know. I mean, given the fact that the knight definitely gives off the impression that monsters can then evolve and potentially become a little more noticeable about what's going on screen, it's going to be fun to see what type of how they'll push that party dynamic, because obviously he's never going to summon a slime or a knight. Well, maybe the slime he might summon around people, but his knight he's not going to summon unless absolutely needed. And as we see, he can also use magic and do some pretty cool things himself. So I'm excited to see what they do with that. But in terms of the fight scene, there was two of them. The first of which wasn't anything too crazy, but I thought it got the job done in terms of showing us the different magics and everything like that. The way that he sunk the characters into the floor, the one who tried to flee and was shitting his pants ends up seeing this horrifying slime. I mean, the initial transformation when we see about the evolution, it reminded me, I think it's called Yu-Gi-Oh card with the weird slime tokens or whatever. It was just such a weird looking creature in the anime, and I love seeing how in this show it just reminded me of that Yu-Gi-Oh monster. But it was just so cool to see the different ways he just took him out, and I love how it basically made them look like a joke, and he himself said it was just the appetizer before the main course. I actually thought they weren't going to fight the knight at all, because immediately they sit down and have a chit-chat. He gives him candy, which apparently was been in his pocket for generations, and he calls him creepy for it. But then, of course, you end up getting the fight. The initial, I guess standoff moment where they're kind of in their idle animations definitely made me laugh, but it just looked like a Fire Emblem cutscene. It's not great, it's not horrible, it's just, it was there and it is what it is. I at the very least appreciate that at points with the CG, when it came to some of the summoning magics, it did look visually good to follow. Just there was a lot of times when we focus on Kelvin. The knight himself, I was fine looking at in 3D, even in the normal mundane scene of them sitting and talking. But the Kelvin stuff definitely remind me of some not so great 3D shows, so we'll see what happens. I mean, if they have to use 3D, I would much rather just make the whole thing goddamn CG, because half the time when you have CG dragon and barely drawn 2D character, you're just asking for a disastrous visuals. So it is what it is. It's not what I would like to see, but it's not the worst thing either. And given how much I enjoyed watching this episode, and clearly, if it's a smaller scale battle, they will do the 2D when they can. But I mean, given the complexity of armor animation and things like that, and I imagine dragons and other things that we'll probably deal with in the show, it's no surprise they went that way, but it is worth noting. The other thing worth noting is that opening. I mean, visually, I love looking at it. I think they did a clever directing choice with the almost getting sucked through a wormhole kind of direction, just the perspectives, characters shattering and breaking almost reality. And the opening was just an absolute bop to listen to. It was actually one of my favorite openings that I've heard this season. And I mean, openings in general are pretty damn good as of late, but there's something about this one that just, it had a vibe, it had a groove, and the ending song wasn't anything to shy away from either. I really enjoyed both of them, but the opening is definitely my favorite out of the two, and I'd argue probably top 5 openings of this season for me, at least that's how I feel, but I'm enjoying it. I mean, Kelvin, I heard some hype last week, which kind of made me raise an eyebrow, not because I thought he was bad or anything, but it didn't give me the impression that this show was trying to make him an amazing character, but just a good one to follow. And to see some hype about the shit he gets up into, I was like, okay, that has me excited even more so for probably the midway point of this show. But by episode 2, they kind of turned him into a goat and just made me say, I want more Kelvin, and I'm so excited to see where they push his character in terms of that OP boundaries, and the party system is kind of what gives it a fresh coat of paint, because just having individual personalities with these monsters or goddesses or whatever else he ends up summoning is pretty fantastic. But thoughts down below, what did you think of Black Summoner episode 2? I know a lot of people checked out episode 1 after learning that there is a blushing menu goddess, but let me know, what do you think? You gonna check out episode 3, or is this one just not for you? Leave a like if you enjoy and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.